This episode of 1v1, the Creator Interview Series, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support this show and the Boss Rush Media family of podcasts, head over to patreon.com/bossrushmedia or search for us on the Patreon app on your smart device. Thanks for helping us build something better.
So, Sebastian, I kind of want to ask you, the single player experience, that's your podcast. Can you tell people about your podcast?
Yeah, for sure. The single player experience is the perfect place for single player gamers to find good single player games to play. It is the podcast, I call it almost like the book club of single player games, to where like you can listen to the show and you can find out about good games, bad games, and everything in between, and it's the backlog video game manager. So this podcast allows you to kind of narrow down and kind of scope down your video game backlog. For instance, I happen to just exercise the 3 games rule on the podcast, where I recommend that people play 3 games in one time if they can, and that those 3 games are going to be their single player narrative focus game, their palate cleanser game, and then their chill and relax game. Your chill and relax game, self-explanatory. You play it whenever you just want. You probably don't have a whole lot of time, or you probably are just in the mood to kind of like sit there and play a game that just kind of helps you unwind, de-stress a little bit. That palate cleanser game is the game that like you play when you're not in the mood for your main single player game. Like, for instance, for you right now, we mentioned you were playing a little bit of a heavy RPG right now. Well, your palate cleanser game might be Mario Odyssey, and that's the game where you're playing. It's completely different than what the other main narrative game that you're playing, and then you're just kind of playing that on the side, so to speak. And then you have your single player narrative focus game, and that's the game you're primarily playing. You're just playing it to try to like beat the game, so to speak. So I kind of give you a little recommendation, and based on like I mentioned, when I do like a analysis on a game or a deep dive, I kind of give you a recommendation of like what type of gamer should probably have it in what type of slot. And so I do that, and then we also have really cool interviews with devs and different game developments and different game developers, and then we talk about a lot of cool stories in video games. Like recently on this upcoming episode this week, I have one of the first people to play test the Xbox Series X on the show, and he gives his experience on like what it was like to play the Xbox Series X before almost anyone in the entire world and behind closed doors. And so he talks about his experiences, how like how they kind of like had to sneak in an underground facility, quote unquote, to like play this new console before it ever came out. And he talks about all that. And then so we have those kind of episodes, and then we have those single player focus episodes where we do a deep dive on a particular game like Persona 5, or we do a deep dive on just general games like God of War or Hogwarts Legacy or different games like that. And then the last but not least, I have what I like to call the indie game recommendation of the week. It's basically an episode every single week that brings you a good indie game that you probably never heard of before, and I'll tell you why I'm recommending it to you, who it's for, and why you should be playing it.
Why do I have a feeling that you never played Gree?
Never played which one?
Gree.
Gree?
Yeah, it's spelled Gris, so you say gris, but it's a French word for gray.
Oh, okay, gotcha. No, I haven't played that one. Give me the general gist.
Oh, so you are this character, this female character who is singing but ends up losing her voice. And when you're like, you look at the statue, and the statue is crumbling. The world that you are in starts losing color. And so the thing that you was close to and that you end up losing, you end up falling away from her, and you have this kind of grief that you got to deal with.
Oh,
But
okay.
your journey is you got to get these colors back, and everything. But there is some kind of presence that's trying to stop you and everything. And at points, it's more of an adventure game. It has a little bit of Metroidvania, but the thing about it is that once you leave an area, you cannot go back to it for the rest of the game.
Gotcha, gotcha. So what
Uh,
is this game for?
it is on Switch, PlayStation, PC. I don't think Xbox has it yet, or
Okay.
anything, but it's it's one of the indie games that it's a place called Namada Studios.
Mhm.
I think Devolver Digital, I think they published it. It came out of nowhere. Like it wasn't in no Nintendo Direct. It wasn't in an indie Direct. Like when I seen it on Facebook. Like it was a trailer on Facebook, and I'm like, "What is this beautiful game?" And next thing you know, it dropped, and people were just like, "Oh my goodness, what is this game about? Why is it gorgeous?" And literally, people just started playing it. It's still one of the games that I feel like it's an all-time indie game because
Okay.
uh it's one of those narrative games that there's no combat or anything, and you can't die. um it's one of those visual narrative games that you have to take a look, but you have to admire the beauty that's in it, even though you're grief stricken as a character and
That's
stuff.
really cool. That's a really cool
Yeah.
premise. I'll have to for sure check that one out. Yeah, yeah, I haven't played that one. Like there's an indie game that comes out pretty much every day of the week, so it's like it's kind of hard to get to all of them.
Yes. Uh, that was the moment I seen it, and the day that it dropped, because they showed it the a week before the game dropped.
Hmm.
So that following week when it dropped, I went a straight pay. I think it was like $10 when it came out or something, or 14.99, whatever price it was. I fully paid it. Like I even own it on PlayStation, and when it like there are just some indie games that I will buy on all platforms that if I can. Like
I feel you.
Gris is one of them. I think I own some on that's on Xbox on play and on it like Cuphead and Orby. I own that on Xbox and on Nintendo Switch. And it's just like if there was an indie game that is so good, um, I don't know how well it may do on one platform, but I'm like, if I could get that digital, if I could get that physical version for a platform, I'll get it. If not, I'll just stick with the digital. Oh, it's coming to this platform. Okay, cool. Oh, it's on sale. Let me snag it. You know, like
That's fun.
so. Yeah, Gree is just I keep recommending Gree to a lot of people because I feel like as great as this game is, it just doesn't. It was just a thing that just won't get noticed. Like it was even at the Game Awards, and it just got like ignored. Like people like never heard it, and I'm like, why why does that happen with some single player games? And that's why I think your podcast is exceptional and phenomenal because you talk about games that people don't pay attention or don't notice and everything.
Yeah.
We're in a world where it's got to be a live service, or it's got to be multiplayer, or it's got to be big and dynamic. And sometimes it's like if you would check out this small little game, you would actually understand why it's a game that's for you, or a game that you could recommend to some people who may need a game like this.
Yeah,
You know.
I think that's a really good point. Yeah, there's a lot of what I like to do is bring awareness to smaller scale indie games and are like games I feel like aren't getting enough flowers. For instance, a game that's very similar in the vein of what you were just talking about is one that I reviewed on the ProNerdReport.com and one I talked about on the single player experience. It is called A Walk with Yaya, and it's a simple game where you're just taking a walk with your grandmother, and your grandmother's telling you telling you stories about what it was like for her growing up, and you kind of get to see like both of these characters learn from each other, and
Hmm.
Yaya's learning almost like how to live her life in a world where like she is limited in the way she can live her life, and it's like how she's coming to terms with her elderly state, and like and her grandson, who you play as the main character, and how he's learning from lessons about the world, who he is, who his family is from Yaya. And it's a really small and intimate game, but a very sweet game at that. And I feel like it's kind of a lot it has a lot of similarities to the game you just mentioned and recommended. So yeah, that's kind of what I do in the single player experience. I like to bring awareness to those type of games.
What we I think I heard that game and I have not picked it up yet. It
It's
sounds
really
so
good.
familiar.
It's
It's
really
good.
good. It's one of the games that, like I say, on the show sometimes I'm like, it's a rare thing for me to cry from a video game, but when I do,
Mhm.
it hits me hard. And I'm like, this is one that, really hit me hard emotionally. So I think this is, if you like emotional games and really games that you like to see like a good lesson in character development, and this is one of those games I'd recommend. And the crazy thing is, like, this game only is about an hour and 20 minutes long, like an hour long at if you like speed run through this. Like, it
Mhm.
is a very quick game, but it hits so hard and so quick.
I think that's why because we have a series called Talk the Walk, and it's a show about walking simulators or adventure games like Gree or what remains of Edith Finch, and of that nature. And it's always, when we get into the emotional state about things. um
If you want to be a Patreon producer, head on over to Patreon, patreon.com/bossrushmedia, and find out which tier is right for you. Our Patreon producers at the $5 tier or higher for this month are Adriel Munger, Austin Campbell, Celeste Roberts, Christian S., Sana Dierig, Francisco Santillan, and Rebecca Jewell. Thank you for your continued support.
there's different gamers and different, people that I interact with, who sometimes when games hit them like that, it makes the discussion even better. It gives more meaning to the game and stuff. I think there was an article that I was planning to write, or I may have wrote it. I gotta check. For Boss Rush, about, you know people who are in the army or who are vets. Is it hard to play something like Gears of War? Or even Gears of War 2, because when a certain character dies in that game, Dom, when he dies, I'm like, no, that's Gears of War 3. Sorry.
Hmm.
Gears of War 3, when Dom dies, like, if you were an army vet, how hard does that hit? Even though you just been through this whole big old action piece, shooting all of these enemies, like, how hard does that hit?
I imagine
And
pretty hard. I mentioned there are certain games that can be triggering for anyone under the right circumstances, and I think like you listed out a circumstance to where like yeah, that could probably hit a military vet pretty hard, like or that can or doesn't necessarily have to be a military vet, someone who just experienced loss, like
mm,
seeing loss of a favorite character in a video game could really resonate with you, like I mentioned to Walk with the Eye a second ago. That game really resonated with me. And even though like the story doesn't, I'm not going to spoil the game, but like even though like the story goes in a different direction than what my life went, like I this was telling a story about a boy and his grandmother, and like as a guy who recently lost his grandmother due to like COVID, about 2 years ago at this point, it was like it really hit hard for me, like to hear his stories or to hear Yaya's tale with her life, and to see those two interactions and the way those two like kind of bounced off one another. It reminded me very much of the way me and my grandmother used to talk. And like I think that's the tale of good narrative. That's the tale of good storytelling, to where like
mhm.
you can have a situation that happens in a video game, even though it doesn't necessarily have to live 1v1 for your life. It like it can basically bring out emotions in you that make you relive moments of your life, or like make you empathize with these characters on a very emotional level. And I think that's one of the beauties of like video game storytelling, where we're at currently of video game stories.
Yeah, there's the game Rhyme, uh that came out a while back, and I played it on PlayStation. and I just like it had this kind of like Zelda experience to it, even though, like I said, once again, not that much combat, but it was once again like the music. And when it got to the ending, and I won't reveal the ending because I think people should play Ron. It was it's one of those put down the controller moments for me. Um, I uh I had talked about the game, and there the level before the game ends and you finally figure out what's going on and stuff. I actually um tagged the composer in my tweet and everything, and I told him just like thank you for this piano arrangement, because not only does it fit the setting and the mood, it changed my mind on how grief kind of happens, and
Yeah.
uh how sometimes when the music is actually being the narrative that's telling the player what's going on or what it's going to lead it to, it really makes you think and appreciate that composers are important to a single player experience, to a narrative, even to multiplayer or co-op players and stuff. But when you're doing an indie game, and mostly for a lot of indie games, that music is really important. I think that's why you see a lot of people who love composers, who love finding people's work and buying the soundtrack. I think video game soundtracks have really, even though I think they need to be more available and everything for people to be like, I don't want. I mean, yeah, there is Spotify, Apple Music stuff, but I'm like, I want to buy your soundtrack, and I feel like that's something that doesn't get advertised enough and everything. And
Yeah.
like, have you ever
Yeah.
felt that way, that you played the game and you really want to go out and just buy the music?
Yeah, I've felt that way. Persona, like I think Persona has this
Ooh,
really cool.
soda's so
Yeah,
good.
it is really good. But yeah, like I've been playing Persona 3 for the first time because I didn't get yeah, I didn't get around to playing it originally. It was I didn't really have that console growing up, so like reliving that now that it's available on all platforms,
Mhm.
it's one of those things to where I'm like, oh, like I love the soundtrack. If it has that like nice jazzy lo-fi, almost
Yes.
upbeat kind of soundtrack, and then like at moments it has like these slower pace, like just ambiance music as well. I'm like, Persona is like to me one of the goats of soundtracks, like Persona 3, and right now my first entry level into Persona was Persona 5, and like I
Yeah.
loved Persona 5's soundtrack. It was that smooth jazz, and then that upbeat moments where it kind of felt like your typical anime, but then it hits back with like that cowboy bebop jazz into it. I'm like, oh, this is good right here. This is Chef's Kiss. But like, I think you're right. Like, music can play a really big part into like your overall experience into a video game, the way that video games narrative comes out. Like, music means a whole lot to gaming, and I don't think it gets like enough flowers and enough love. But I will say, like, I can understand why they don't make music readily available. As far as you like downloading a physical soundtrack and a physical
Mm.
disc, because like there's only going to be so many people who are going to buy those units, and it takes a
Yeah.
lot, and it does take a lot of overhead and like upfront money to be able to like print out those things. And what happens if you're a smaller scale indie game and only like barely 5% of gamers ever heard about your game to begin with, like, or that out of that 5%, how many of that 5% is going to buy your soundtrack, like,
True.
you kind of have to think about it like that. It is easier to just put your soundtrack on Spotify, and then for those people who want to enjoy that kind of experience, you can still enjoy the music, and like the artist to a certain extent still gets paid, you know.
Yes. That I can see. Um, I know you mentioned Kingdom Hearts and
Mhm.
Utada for those. Simple and Clean was Simple and Clean is literally on the level of the Mario Brothers theme song, or just hearing the first level of Mario. Like, you hear Kingdom Hearts, the first thing that comes to mind, when you walk away, you don't hear
You
me
can
say.
hear me say,
And that's
please. Yeah. Oh,
like
baby, don't go.
right. It's just like a lot of people, like if they're singing it or you hear it, like some people will be dancing, but when that chorus come on, it's probably one of the most recognizable modern songs or just parts in video game music history. Like
Yeah.
it's so like even Sanctuary is so good. Like Sanctuary from Kingdom Hearts 2, it's just like so breathtaking, so moving that I don't know people went out to find out Utada's music. But when I heard it, I knew of it, Utada, but they weren't selling her music in the States. Like,
No.
and if you did happen to see it, you had to be at Suncoast to find it. Like,
Yeah, I'll be real with you though. I think that was like a part of the culture at the time though. Like, let's
mhm,
say Kingdom Hearts was a modern day game, like it just came out for the first time with the anime being as big as it is now. And
yes,
like, yeah, I think like that song would be one of the biggest songs in the world right now because like, back then it was like you and I are both like you and I are both black and like it was very much like a different world to be a black nerd back in the early 2000s, back in the 90s, back in
correct.
the 80s. It was a different way. I mean, we weren't like, like even amongst other black people, we weren't kind of like free to show that level of like passion about those things because they always had
Yep,
some kind of like clapback for that. They always just like, man, you really into that kind of thing? Like really? Like you be watching that kind of stuff and like back then you kind of got shunned for it. But for like now though, like there's so many black nerds and like our culture is so different and the way that everyone is basically like allowed so to speak without really any judgment to
hmm
be a part of any different thing that they are passionate about. Like there's so many black anime fans, like I know tons of them now, like versus back then there was a lot of people you wouldn't know who was an anime fan because they didn't want to admit it out loud.
Oh, we have public access
Hmm.
anime. Like
Yeah.
and so I before Cowboy Bebop even got shown in America, they were showing a few episodes on our public access in our area. So I was watching that. I was watching Rama Half, I was watching um what's the one with Akira and
Hmm.
stuff. But then I was watching like Mad Bull and stuff,
Yeah.
which I shouldn't have been watching, but it was just like when it came to anime, yeah, there was like Robotech and Macross that was kind of very edited uh, for America, but just like
Mhm.
even like Speed Race and stuff, even though that stuff was edited, you didn't get like the real dub stuff unless you was watching things on public access or you was
Yeah.
watching it on like on a real late night. You didn't get this stuff from Japan and everything that people like even with the subtitles and stuff. Like I was watching Ninja Scroll
Mhm.
on public access. And it was just like, okay, I remember this. And it was just like, I've never seen animation or I never seen anything mature as this on the level of an R-rated movie. You know,
Yeah, for
like
sure.
this is historic. And the thing about it is that I seen the people who was doing it, but I didn't personally know them and everything. And then when it went away, it was just like I don't have no place to get my anime fix. And like
Yeah.
I didn't have no area to talk about anime in games. Now if I go online and look at a group that's very respectable, friendly and stuff, we could talk about anime and video games and music all day long. And
Yeah,
it,
for
like
sure.
and I agree, that's cool.
Yeah, imagine if like Kingdom Hearts and Simple and Clean came out today though. I'm like
Oh,
it would be goaded at that point. Like it would be one of the biggest songs probably out there, top at least top 50 in the charts right now. And like,
mhm.
like anime fans and video game fans would like celebrate it. It would be like, oh my god, did you hear just this new song? Like it was in a Kingdom Hearts game, a video game of all things, but it feels very anime-ish and it's a beautiful, like got a beautiful artist singing this like high phrase song and everyone would have been like, "Oh my goodness!" Like, yeah, that song is amazing, especially with like the wave of K-pop coming in and different things like that.
Hmm.
Like we're in a different time now to where like I think if this came out nowadays, like it'd be on a whole nother level.
And plus, Utada, they did a song with Timberland, and I'm like,
Yeah.
wait, what? It's just a bop. I mean, for the young kids, they say it's a bop,
Hmm.
but I'm like, this is a banger. I love this. I'm like,
Yeah, for
why
sure.
did nobody tell me this? It's so weird.
But imagine if Utada was like, if they were dropping Kingdom Hearts today, like, that band that she would probably be doing a duet with Beyonce at this point in time,
Hmm.
or Rihanna or
Yes.
something like to that nature. Like, she would probably be working with some of the most premier artists in the world because like the landscape of anime and K-pop and just music and nerd culture is completely celebrated versus back then it was like still on the up and up on the uprise, so to speak.
So shout out to you, Utada. We
Yeah, for
love your
sure, for
music.
sure. Simple and clean, man. Sanctuary. Oh, so good.
So, uh, well, before we go, one last question I have to ask you, uh, Sebastian, what is your favorite cereal or even breakfast food that you
Hmm.
like to like get down with? Or is
Hmm.
there anything, or did you do any kind of snacking while gaming sometimes?
I'm not a snacker wild gamer. I like a clean controller, so to speak, and I never
Okay.
like I don't like to eat while I'm gaming because I'm like I want my controller to be as clean and pristine as possible. But like but I will I'll hit you up with the breakfast one. I like a good classic breakfast of like scrambled eggs, toast. I'm more of a
Ooh.
sausages person than a like bacon person, so I like that. Or just like breakfast tacos, man. Oh, so good. So good. But before we go, though, I want to hit you back with a question.
Okay.
All right. So this is a question just to give a preview of my show, The Single Player Experience. When I have a new guest on, everyone, I like to ask them some icebreaker questions. Like I usually ask them their icebreaker questions, what's their top 5 games of all time. But Ed here is going to be a guest on The Single Player Experience coming up, where we're going to be talking about a really cool topic in the Nintendo landscape of things. And just to give you a preview of that episode, Ed, here's an icebreaker question that I like to ask all my guests. So, what superpower would Kirby get if he absorbed you?
What superpower that what he would get?
Yeah, what kind of
Uh,
power? What kind of power or characteristic trait would Kirby get if he absorbed you?
um, Definitely he would get a singing trait. With
Okay.
vocally arranging parts and everything. So like if he sucked me and spitted me out, but took my power, he would get ability to sing tunes and just be able to harmonize and uh maybe use that to make people you know fall in love with the melody before he sucks them in or knocks them out with a bat or something or whatever. But he would get that ability of music from me,
Okay,
I should
okay.
say.
That's what's up. That's what's up. So he almost have like Jigglypuff abilities.
Yes.
Almost. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
I like that. I like that. So yeah, everyone be on the lookout for Ed to appear on the Single Player Experience podcast very soon. And I just wanted to give you a little preview of what kind of questions you were going to get when when the roles were reversed and you were guesting on my show.
I am excited. I have a not. I have knowledge. I am prepared for it. So
I'm excited to have you there, but thank you so much. I hope I was a good guest today, and
yes,
yeah, and by the way, breakfast tacos to me are goat kind of breakfast. I'm not a cereal person, so I'd probably
I
go with breakfast person. Yeah,
I
I don't like the drinking of the milk process. So I'm like I'm not a milk kind of person. I'm a milk products person, but not a milk
Mhm.
person. So and that kind of already eliminates cereal. What am I gonna be doing? Eating dry cereal out of a bowl? I'm a
Oh
little
no,
foolish.
I love that milk with the good honey nut cereal, like the honey in it. Go go go
Hmm.
go. Like to me, it's the reverse version of ramen in a
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, I can get that.
How you eat the noodles and then you drink the broth and for some people they could bow or whatever. Um, which reminds me, like when it comes to ramen. if I go to different shops and stuff, I'll eat it the way that they cook it.
Hmm.
But I mostly drain all the water out and just leave a little bit and put
Oh,
the
I'm the
pack
same
in.
way. I'm the same way if I'm doing ramen. Yeah. I get it. I don't want it to be soupy. I want it to be more like a
Yeah.
yeah, more like a noodles dish than I do like a actual soup. But yeah, my partner thinks I'm completely weird for that. But like I'm like I'm right there with you. I don't want the soup.
Uh, yeah, I'll take the soup anywhere else because I
Yeah.
feel like they cook it right.
Hmm.
My 49-cent self would be like, you know, throw this in the water.
Yeah, for
I just
sure.
I need just a little wetness so when I put that pack in, you know, it could mix around. But I'm like, I need that flavor on that noodle and everything.
Oh, okay, I gotcha. Is there a food from a TV show that you ever wanted to try?
Um, man, that means I have to go to Food Wars. Um,
Yeah, not necessarily Food War. Yeah, Food Wars is a good
actually,
anime though. Yeah.
actually, Rama have uh the Okinaki,
Mhm.
like that little piece of one that the one character that she makes. I cannot think of her name. Uh, whatever pizza that whatever pizza that they make out of that, I want to eat. I've never got to try it.
That
That is
sounds good.
sake. That is sake is the two things that I want to try. That is still on my list to try.
That sounds good. Yeah, I think that would be perfect, and I'd love to wash that down with like some Keenan and Kel orange soda.
Oh wow.
I had to throw it back to the '90s, man. Had to.
Oh, Kenan and Kel, the orange soda. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
which reminds me, what is the best orange soda to you?
Ooh. I'm gonna, you're probably gonna give me a little bit of flack here for saying this, but I'm a Fanta guy. I think I like the Fanta orange
Okay.
soda. Yeah,
Okay.
Sunkiss is pretty good though.
Sunkist cherry lit limeade, bomb big. That is
I've
bomb
never tried it.
big.
Is it good?
It's so good. Yeah, it it literally puts the cherry Fanta to shame. Even though I love cherry
Wow.
Fanta, it puts the cherry Fanta to shame. It's because see when it comes to orange soda with me, Fanta is good. Uh, and Sunkist is good, but I think Crush got them. I think Crush got them on the orange. I'm old school, so knee high, uh,
Neha Neha
knee
Peach is
high.
goat, man.
Okay,
Yeah,
we're
Neha
brothers.
Peach. Yeah,
Like
yeah, for
we're
sure.
family now. Because
Yeah.
my sister, because they stopped selling parts of it in my
Hmm.
city, but my sister she went into one of the little stores in another city by us, and she seen they sell it as a 2 liter. So she came
Oh,
out with two bottles, and it was still 99 cents.
oh, that's
I'm like,
amazing.
oh, this the peach knee high. That's the anointed right there.
Yeah. They
So
so what soda do you get when you go to the movies? Like here at like AMC or like Cinemark, they have those like automatic like soda dispensers now to where
yeah,
you
yeah.
press the screen and such like that.
Mhm.
I'm like, what soda do you get? I'm like, do you get like a funky flavor or do you go just traditional while you're eating? I'm assuming you're a
So
popcorn guy here.
nachos.
Nachos in a movie theater?
Yeah, I do
Wow.
nachos and cheese, or I do the pretzel bites and cheese.
Oh,
I do popcorn sometimes, but what ends up happening is that I don't have no popcorn to share with anybody. So if I get like the big one that they get, majority is not going to get eaten because I'm so focused on the movie. Like I'm
okay,
into the
gotcha.
movie. So I know that if I do the chips and or the pretzels, by the time I'm done with the previews, I it's all gone or it's cold and I don't need and I have to worry about it and stuff. Um so that's kind of me. I will do popcorn, but I normally go for the nachos or the pretzels and everything.
Okay, okay, I can respect that. So I need to know what like snacks you had. We'll tweet each other about it. While you're watching the Super Mario Brother movies.
Okay. For the drink, I normally go for part Hawaiian punch or um they got Fruitopia, kind of whatever the fruit punch juice is.
Uh
I'll
huh.
put that in, and then I'll mix it with Sprite or Sierra Mist.
Oh
or
yeah.
I
Okay.
forgot. It's Starry now for
What,
Pepsi.
Sierra Mist is Starry now?
Yeah, they don't sell Sierra.
Oh.
Pepsi don't. I didn't know Pepsi did Sierra Mist, but that was their
Oh.
Sprite, and so they discontinued Sierra Mist because I wasn't seeing it in the stores, and they rebranded it as Starry.
Wow. I didn't know this either. This is I feel like we've divvied off into welcome to the food chat, or maybe like
Oh,
or the snack channel, but like I love this conversation. I'm learning so lot. I didn't know like Pepsi did Sierra Mist either, or
yeah.
used to
So
at least.
so I was at the grocery store and I see this thing called Starry. I'm like, okay, I'll try it. And then my Pepsi representative for my job came in and I see the thing. I was just like, wait a minute, you guys make this? And the guy's like, yeah. I'm like, is this why I don't see Sierra Mist or anything? He's like, yeah, they stopped selling Sierra Mist. They rebranded it as Starry, but they changed the recipe of it. So
Wow.
if you was having a hard time tasting the lemon lime and Sierra Mist, that's what they focused on with Starburst, that people could taste the lemon lime flavor into it.
Wow.
I was like,
Okay.
oh, okay, yeah. Could
That
you
that
look at
yeah, I'm learning a
okay,
whole lot here. I didn't know any of that.
yeah, because if you look at it, when I was looking at it, I was thinking like, okay, this is from the Seven Up company.
Hmm.
Or nope, RC doesn't make it. They were just like, this is straight Pepsi. I'm like, but I didn't see the Pepsi logo on it. He was just like, yeah, you wouldn't even notice it unless you seen it in the Pepsi aisle or you talk to a Pepsi representative.
And how many exotic like sodas do you try out? Because you have like soda knowledge that I do not. Like,
So, I normally so what happens is like with a lot of soda stuff, if we get it at my job, I try it, or if I
okay,
see it around, and it's mostly like the Pepsi, Coke, and Dr Pepper stuff. So, if I see it, I give it a try and everything.
okay,
Like
that
when
makes sense.
like the Flaming Hot Mountain Dew came out, I had to give it a try so
I
I
couldn't
could
do
talk
that.
about it.
I could
I,
not do that. That's so funny though.
it was an interesting taste because it. I will say this: it does give off if you're eating something flaming hot. Cheetos flaming hot has a certain taste. So if you drink it, it does give that spiciness. It does give that taste. The thing about it is, it's just it doesn't taste right in Mountain Dew because uh the flaming hot covers up any sweetness. And when people drink Mountain Dew, they want to taste sweetness instantly.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
even when they do like the zero flavors of stuff, like the diet stuff, I go out and try, so that people who can't drink this, that this is what you're getting in diet. Like you still can taste the flavor. The sugary part is kind of reduced, so there is that different taste if you don't do want to do a lot of sugar and stuff. But I'm like, it is good or bad or whatever. So I do like kind of give people that that update or that review and stuff. Because I see somebody they don't like the Dr Pepper strawberries and cream. I'm like, how can you not? It's so good.
I've never
But
tried that Dr Pepper strawberries and cream.
hmm
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Maybe next time I go to the movies, I'll have to sample it and see if that can mix well with my popcorn.
So I don't know if they have that at the movie theaters.
Oh,
Because
okay.
yeah, because our movie theater does Coke. Some of them do Coke, some of them do Pepsi,
Hmm.
and that's it. So any
Yeah,
kind
it's
of like
the or, huh? Yeah.
yeah, so if there's like anything else, I probably have to go like a $2 or $3 movie. Where the machine is kind of like they wrote the flavors on there, and you're trying to be like, what brand is this? And it can be like, let me see, is this Aldi's or is this like Walmart's? Is it the
Hmm.
dollar store? Like what flavor? I'm like, where did you get this? Now, don't get me wrong. Some of them is Bombay. I would say that, but I'm like, I just want to know who makes it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. So what's the snack in the game going to be for the rest of the day?
So this game for the rest of the day is going to be Octopath Traveler 2.
Okay,
I'm probably and for the snack it's going to be chocolate covered cherries.
I like that. I like that. Okay, I can respect that. Respect
So,
that.
but with that, everybody, that is going to be it for this 1v1. Sebastian, thank you so much. Go ahead and plug where people can find you and where they can find your podcast.
Man, if you liked all this craziness that we talked about today, you can experience more of it at the Single Player Experience. You can find the Single Player Experience on all your favorite podcast platforms or on YouTube on the Pronerd Report YouTube channel. You can also find me at on Twitter at Sebastion 23. I'll be there. You can hit me up, send the back signal, and I will answer the call. And then you can also just listen to the Single Player Experience. You can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere you like to enjoy that sort of thing. And go on the pronerdreport.com where I write my written reviews. You can also find the podcast there. So yeah, it's pretty much everywhere you can possibly think of. And definitely check it out. It's my baby, so to speak, my passion project, and I am completely in love with doing it, and have so many great guests like yourself, Ed, who come on the show and really brighten up my day. So yeah, that's where you can find it.
All right. And with that, everybody, have a great week, have a great weekend, and we will see you next time on 1v1. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
1v1, the Creator Interview Series, is a product of Boss Rush Media, LLC, and part of the Boss Rush Podcast Supplemental Podcast. This show is hosted by Celeste Roberts. You can also hear interviews from other Boss Rush Media members on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at FairyCrypt. To get updates on the latest episodes, follow the Boss Rush Podcast, Boss Rush Media, and Boss Rush Network on all major social media platforms, or subscribe to the Boss Rush podcast feed in your favorite podcast application. Join the Boss Rush Network Discord and Facebook groups to interact with other friends and fans. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.